And we'll be kicking everything on here. Get everything where we can see everybody and everything. So I hope you're doing well. I hope your week has gone well. Welcome to Happy Friday. So hopefully you're ready to go. All right, so we still have about 1 minute, so let's just sit tight a moment, give you a chance to go ahead and get your coffee. Folks are still signing in. Appreciate all the emojis. Good to see all my friends that we've done work for over the years. Good to see you. So that's wonderful. All right, so I've got 10 o'clock. Let's go ahead and kick things off right now, and so that we can get going here. And so we're going to be dealing with a topic today. My gracious, I've got everything popping up at 10 o'clock. Everything starts coming on. So today we're going to be dealing with the topic inventing tomorrow's metrics, sharing the future of project management. Probably if I had known how difficult it was to prepare for this particular webinar, I probably wouldn't have put it in here. Not that I don't think you need to know it. You need to know what we're going to be talking about. But this is so difficult because it's changing so fast. I mean, literally within 3 months, you start seeing organizations change and do something totally different. So one of the things that I want to say to you is that this is a heavy content. I know all of mine are real heavy, but this is extremely heavy. There's a lot of different metrics and samples that we'll give you that we've seen other companies are using as they're trying to connect AI and data and all the research associated with that. And so one of the things that you see is that people are just making so many adjustments right now because of the technology. And so what we're talking about today, literally in a few months, might be something totally different that people are talking about just because of the technology surge. So as we look at this, all right, let's get it going here. Why aren't you moving for me? I'm sorry, everybody. There we go. All right, so as we look at this particular topic here, so why does this topic even matter to us in the first place? And so it's important for us to understand that as we're talking about some of the technology and all of this that's happening for us, that it goes all the way back to how project management is shifting. So those of you who've been in other classes with us, such as the PMP, you know that I've been talking about how we're shifting from running a project to changing the organization, running a project and delivering deliverables to creating value. And so we've talked about that value in other webinars. That's what's really driving what we're talking about today, because it means that if we're driving value, then we're going to have to do other type of metrics. We're going to have to measure other things. So PM metrics are necessary and critical, obviously, for running and measuring performance in a project. Current PM metrics, though, are being looked at as insufficient to be able to drive where PMI is going. And so this idea of value, what kind of value we bring to the organization, what kind of value we bring to the customer is going to be extremely huge in being able to make this shift. It's already shifted on the PMP test. And so they all say that they've got this terminology of value. What kind of value is that project bringing? Not just typical return on investment, but any kind of benefit, not just to the organization that's doing the project or the agency doing the project, but the entire organization from a strategic standpoint. All right, next, let's look at challenges in shifting from old delivery control metrics. So old delivery control metrics is where we've been in project management for about 50 years. And so we basically have been monitoring the project, measuring the project, and making sure we delivered what the scope of project was. As we did traditional project management, we all have lived in this world here. As you look at making the shift, back in early 2000, you started seeing Scrum and Agile start coming on board. And the reason for that, as we all know, is because traditional project management was a command and control type of thing, and we needed flexibility. We were hitting moving targets. We were trying to do this. So what we're seeing now is we're going now from just trying to hit moving targets to where now we're trying to take our organization to hit moving targets, and that's going to be project management oriented. Let's start with comparing and controlling the value delivery. So we've got two sides of this. And so delivery control was basically where we have been. So we measure time, cost, scope. We focus on completing work, reward, plan, compliance. We report what's already happened. It's always after the fact. Treats success as delivery, prioritizes internal control. That's where we have been. That's where we are in some cases absolutely right now. Where we are heading is what you're seeing over here to the right, which is value delivery benefit. So this is where we're measuring outcomes, impact, usefulness. You're focusing on creating value. You're looking at you're trying to predict what's going to happen. You're trying to predict whether people are going to use this new tool or use the new processes. And so all of that prediction is the reason why you're seeing the technology really anchor for project management into that area. And so AI is going to be the main driver for a lot of that, because AI, where it shines, is the predictability of things. Now, it's not always right. Don't mistake what I'm saying. You are still the person having to validate it, but it does give you a fast analysis of what's happening, and it can also show you some trigger conditions of what to watch out for that could be happening. And so you're checking it, and if you don't think it's happening, then you move on. But it could give you those early warning signs. So shifting from delivery control to value delivery. So this is a graphic that I created, and then I had AI kind of gussy it up for you here so you could see it here. But I think this really does a good job of showing the two sides. On the left-hand side, this is where we are right now. We're trying to make the change to the right-hand side. So you're talking about time, cost, scope, plan compliance, status reporting, lagging indicators. That's typically what we measure. Where's the project today? So that's typically where we are now. Outputs and success. But if you look on the right, this is where the organizations are going. This is where PMI seems to be going with everything they've written. PMBOK 8 supports this. PMBOK 7 gave roots to this. And even the PMP now has made changes as of July 9th to support this. So you're looking at value creation, benefits realization, stakeholder confidence, adaptability, predictive indicators. And so this piece right here is the piece that I'm talking about the most, because those predictive indicators, it hasn't happened yet, but it's a forecast. They're forecasting this as a potential problem, and so that we've got time to try to do something to try to counteract it. And then what is decision quality? Think about how good are our decisions, and then also success for outcomes, value, and learning. So this is what's happening. We're trying to shift from the left to the right as much as possible. Some of your organizations will shift faster. Some of your organizations will shift more than some of the others. It all depends on what type of projects you run, and it all depends on how aligned are your projects to the strategic plan, because that's where it's going to be connected. So here's some benefits of shifting that we're talking about for delivery control to value delivery. Stronger connections to organizational strategy, better measurements for success, improved stakeholder satisfaction, more adaptability, better decision making, earlier detection of risk, greater focus on benefits realization, better use of data, and more sustainable project outcomes. Now, this sounds like a pie in the sky kind of slide, and I give you that because so much of what we have right now, we're not there yet. For an example, data. Our data is pretty cruddy in many of our companies. We've archived it for 100 years, but the bottom line is we didn't archive it in any type of template typically, and we don't have any type of structure. And so to bring AI in, which is going to use that data, is going to be a challenge. And so you'll probably have some projects getting ready to do what we're talking about here just to get our data ready. So I'm just assuming that. But when we look at these types of things, these are the things that's going to be propelling our organization in the future to where the Mickey Mouse stuff that we're doing, we probably won't be doing in the future. AI will be monitoring, checking it, and sending us notices, letting us know what's happening for us to double check something or to give us early warning or leading indicators so that we can double check and make sure something's not happening. This is going to give us some stronger connections to the organizational strategy. So let's do a little bit more of a deep dive in these handful of areas. Projects are not just completed, but are connected to the organization's strategic goal. This is one of the biggest shifts that we have seen on the PMP test that is just amazing. And not that we don't agree with it. We all agree with it. Every project we run should be driving some type of strategic goal or objective. Many times we don't feel like that because we're running projects in other cases. But rather than ask, are we following a plan, which we typically ask right now, are we on time, on budget? We're asking, is this project still aligned with the organization's strategy? Is it still going in the direction that the organization wants? Is it still bringing the value that the organization wants? And that's a different mindset than whether or not we're on time and on budget. So you're looking at better measurements of success. A product may be delivered on schedule, but if employees do not use the product, it doesn't bring any value. And you see this happen with some projects. We do major projects, and then a lot of times people resist it, either because of the change it's going to bring to them, or they resist it because they just don't like what has happened or the new way of doing things. There's also going to be some improved stakeholder satisfaction. The value delivery paradigm keeps the stakeholders involved throughout the project. Now, think about it from your stakeholders' viewpoint right now. Traditional projects, we've struggled over the years with having stakeholders and keeping them involved. They would get involved in the beginning, they get involved at the end, but we lose them in the middle. Now, maybe that's not your case, and if it's not, great. You're doing some awesome things. You need your own webinar because that's you've got some things to share we don't know. But typically, that's what we have in traditional. In Agile, we typically have stakeholders involved all the way through. They have a seat at the table. They're working with a product owner. They're ranking the features or the functionality they want, and they constantly are getting something they want at the end of each iteration or sprint. So that makes a lot of sense why they're engaged. What you're looking at here, though, is that your stakeholders are going to be even more engaged because they see the value of what you're delivering. And so you're delivering what they need. You're delivering things that are their expectation of what's going to change, where confidence is at risk or declining, whether the project outcome will be accepted, less surprises. So hopefully down the road, and that is a projection even of PMI, is that improved stakeholder satisfaction is going to come from all of this. More adaptability. Delivery control often treats changes as a threat. For a matter of fact, in many cases, we don't even want to change. A change is a hassle in traditional project management because we've got to do a change request, we've got to go through change control board, and we've got to wait for somebody to decide. I mean, we've all been there. So this allows for the project team to adjust when the customer does need changing, or when risk emerge, technology shifts, requirements become clear, and or original assumptions prove incomplete. But one of the things that you're seeing here is that the new technology that we're seeing today is going to cause us to move faster, change faster. You probably are already experiencing some of this. So the benefit is a project that remains useful instead of just being compliant. And so what you're delivering at the end is exactly what they want. And it's the same thing that you thought from the beginning. You're delivering at the end exactly something that's going to bring that level of value to them. And that's exactly what you're wanting to have happen. You're going to make better decisions. Think about the capability of having technology give you a forewarning of different things for you to look at, for you to double check. Not perfect technology. Don't mistake what I'm saying. I love AI, but AI is not perfect. It messes up. And so you're the one who's making the decision, but this is triggering saying, hey, look at this area here. So a value delivery approach supports decision intelligence. Did the organization make the right decision? Do they have the right strategic plan? It gives leaders that information for choosing whether to continue with these projects, or they start realizing we've got to adjust a little bit, which is very common for all of us. Or is this the wrong project based on where the economy is right now, where our organization is right now? So what you're looking at is current data and what does it suggest about the value? And so that's that predictive piece that most of us have not had the experience with because we have not had anything to predict except for ourselves and our team in most cases. Early detection of risk, which is always very positive for us, because if I can know about potential of risk early, and of course, if you've used AI at all in trying to look at risk, it's really a pretty good indicator of what could go wrong. We can do our normal risk analysis with our team and then run something through AI and then be surprised that AI surfaced one or two things that we didn't think about. We talk about it, maybe it does fit, maybe it doesn't, but I like hearing what AI had to say about it, even if I choose not to use it. So you're looking at a lot of different things. It increases that stakeholder confidence that we're more thorough, unresolved dependency counts, adoption readiness, or decision delays, requirements volatility. So value delivery metrics use a lot of different indicators that we probably are not tracking right now very well. And so down the road, you'll see that many times what you're going to be doing is putting in mechanisms to track a whole different set of metrics. Greater focus on benefits realization. This is the reason why customers have a project is they want a certain amount of value from that project. And so value delivery. So is it new growth, new customers, cost reduction, improved customer experience, reduced cycle time, higher employee productivity, stronger compliance, improved service quality? Why? What kind of value do we want? Now, a lot of times we think, well, it's all about the money. And for many of you, it absolutely is. Return on investment's everything. You're putting $2 million in this. You're wanting to be able to get your money back and start making money from that project. Many of you that are running nonprofits or hospital or in healthcare, it's going to be a little different value, but you still want value from that project. Faster diagnostic testing, more accurate diagnostic testing. And so it might not be a dollar amount. You could put a dollar on it over time, but the point is up front, it's more I can help my patient faster. We can make sure we diagnose faster so that we can get them help faster. So we still have value value that we're looking at. And so everybody running a project is looking at value through their eyes. Better use of data. This is one of the areas that will have to shift. The bad data that we have archived are the data that we're just flipping a coin about. We've archived it forever, but we don't know what kind of structure it's in. This is probably going to be a piece of some information that we're going to have to do. The reason why I keep going back to your internal data is you want the AI tool that you get ready to implement to work from the inside of your organization. And the reason is because it's going to be customized, it's going to be more secure, but the main reason is it's pulling from who you are or who you have been. If you don't have internal data or your data is so messed up that you can't use it, then you're going to be buying and renting from a warehouse. A warehouse is going to be much more generic, and you're not going to like the answers that it gives because it doesn't know you, doesn't know your culture, doesn't know your organization. So precision adoption risk, forecasting cost at completion, identifying stakeholder sentiments, measuring value, improving future project estimates. Over time, you've got more correct data in your archives. AI is reading those archives and getting better and better over time, giving you estimates and help and risk and all the things that we're talking about. But in the beginning, it's not going to be absolutely correct at all because we don't even necessarily have the right data. Now, if your organization's different, then great, you've got something going there. More sustainable project outcomes. A project can look successful at launch, but fail after handover or handoff. Value delivery says, can this solution be sustained after the project team leaves? So we were doing great as we built the project, as we did the project, then we hand it off and they start having hiccups. We've had those things happen as you have. And so that means more attention to training, adoption, knowledge sharing. If you look at PMBOK 8 and if you look at the PMP content, knowledge sharing has been increased all the way since PMBOK 7 for PMI. And the reason they've done that is because we have kind of had that dump and run philosophy in some of our projects. I'm sure you're different, okay? But many of us have seen those situations where a vendor dumps it in our laps and says, God bless you, good luck, thanks for hiring us, and they run on. And then you and your team are trying to figure this thing out. So what you're really wanting, and PMI is really putting the content together for more and more since PMBOK 7 and now 8 and now into the PMP test, is a transition, knowledge transfer. So you're transitioning that project from your team who built the project to your operational group who's going to be running and using that project now that it's finished, and training them so that you're not having to hire the vendor again is really one of the biggest benefits for that. The other piece would be separate outputs from outcomes. So because projects are typically delivered through activity instead of value, most people measure the wrong thing. And this is kind of where we are right now. Not a criticism, it's more of an observation. So please take it like that, okay? So an output is what the project produces. An impact is the larger value created by the outcome. So what we typically are measuring is the output, the deliverable. And I get it. If you got a contractor, you have to measure something to pay that vendor. And so that's okay. But what you're really wanting is a bigger macro view of this rather than the little micro view that we spend our time with. We see our project and how it works, and we run a good project. But how is this project going to impact the organization? And how is this project going to bring value when it's finished? That's really the questions that are being asked. So when you look at separating outputs from outcomes, so an output would be what we deliver. An outcome is what changes because of it. The impact is the broader result. The benefit is the measurable value the organization cares about. So let's give you an example. So what we deliver. So if you look at your iPhone or your whatever phone you're using, your mobile phone, and so you look at your cell phone, you think if you were around before cell phones were starting to happen, then you know the difference and how the culture has shifted. We went from spending a little bit of time to where we'd spend all our time pumping in with a phone card, calling home or calling the office, to where now we're carrying a phone with us. But that phone was strictly for one thing, making phone calls. And so that's where all the commercials came about with, can you hear me now? And if you've not heard that commercial, that's how they all started, because we had terrible reception. And now today we don't have that. The assumption is our phone's going to be pretty awesome. And then what you see is that all of us are now using our phone for other things. We're taking pictures and we're doing movies and we're creating all kinds of things. We've got all kinds of stuff on that that phone. What's happened? It changed how we look at using a phone. I don't use a phone. It is my communicator for everything. I can take pictures of my grandkids. I can take pictures of what's going on. And I can take pictures of that part I'm needing to order from the parts house that I don't have a clue what it's called, but that's the part I need. And so we've all been in those situations. But my point saying that is it's changed how we do business, that one device. Well, all of these things we're doing with other technologies, such as AI and all the ripples of AI, will make that same adjustment as well. So let's talk about creating new value metrics. This is where we have gaps right now. Maybe your organization's different, but this is typically it. Starting with a hypothesis, creating a value hypothesis. This is a statement that explains how the project is expected to create value. So if we were looking at AI and you are bringing AI into your company, like many of you might be, you're looking at it from the eyes of how can AI bring value to our organization? Is it going to bring risk? Probably. Is it going to get rid of jobs? Possibly. But probably it's going to increase jobs, and probably it will change how jobs are done. But could it get rid of a job? No doubt about it. It could. It could get rid of it. So a value hypothesis statement that explains how the project's expected to create value. So an example of what we're talking about, if we implement the new scheduling system, staff will reduce manual coordination time, which will improve response speed and reduce operating costs. And so this hypothesis then becomes the foundation of forecasting, and you're measuring it against the hypothesis. It's very much like doctoral students having to come up with their hypothesis. So we're measuring it. Does the findings and the data and the research say that this hypothesis is true, or is it false? And so the team can then ask what early signals show that the value is likely, what assumptions are happening, what future metrics would confirm that this is happening. So you're not trying to just say, well, I'm doing it on a wing and a prayer and based on opinion. You're doing it based on data-driven research. And that's what project management needs, and that's what it works better when we have data to make that decision. So let's give you this little graphic here from value hypothesis to future metrics. Look over to the left. You'll see value hypothesis. You'll create your hypothesis. Then second, you will what must be true, key assumptions. And you are making assumptions very much like on your project, but you're making it very much on the new metrics. And then third, what early signals suggest value. These are going to be leading indicators. And then number 4 is expected outcome. And then number 5 is going to be the future metrics. And your future metrics are not going to be perfect in the beginning. You're going to create them. You're going to have to tweak them because it's going to include a lot of different things. Some stuff, it didn't matter. And some stuff you start looking at and you think, we're measuring that, but my gosh, it takes forever to get those metrics to get the data to measure that metric. So the long and short of your value hypothesis to future metrics is going to be there at the bottom. The team can then ask what early signals show this value is likely, what assumptions must hold true, and what future metric would confirm or challenge that hypothesis. And so what you're doing is you're creating something brand new, and that's hard for us. We seem to work in the box. We do everything with the box. We're doing everything with our policy and procedures. Nothing wrong with those, but to do what we're talking about here, you're having to think outside the box. The what if? What about those new metrics? What about that new value that we're trying to measure? All right, so leading, lagging, predictive, and prescriptive metrics. Let's talk about those. So many of you have heard these. You already know what these are. You use these in many cases. So lagging metrics, this is where we are right now, what already happened. So what percentage of our project is on time? 30%. How much over budget are we? We're 7% over budget. See, those are all lagging metrics. We know what it is because it's already happened. Can't do anything about it because it's already happened, okay? Leading metrics is where what you're trying to do. You're trying to see, is there a way for me to forecast that the project is going to be over budget before it's over budget? And so what may happen, what could happen? Predictive metrics, what the data estimates is likely to happen. And this is predictive and prescriptive is where AI seems to tap in the best. It makes projections. It is a predictive analysis tool most of the time. And so even though it's not perfect, it still can generate some things that we just don't think about because we're in the old culture. We're in the old mindset. So prescriptive metrics, what action should be taken next? And you can even ask AI to give you some recommendations and look and see, is there something that it suggests that we haven't even thought about or looked at? So the anatomy of a useful new metric, since we're going to be creating these things, how do we make sure we do them right? So the first is going to be strategic relevance. It's got to connect to the strategic outcomes, to upper management. And so this is going to bridge the gap between the frontline person who's running the project and management, because what you're doing makes a difference. The project manager and the team make a difference to that company. Second is going to be the leading signal power. So it moves early enough to reveal emerging value, risk, friction, any kind of problem. Third is going to be actionability. Each movement in the metric suggests a clear decision, intervention, or escalation. And then four, balanced design. It prevents local optimization by balancing speed, quality, value, risk, and team sustainability. All of that's feeding in. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, you have all the different pieces that are going to be there for every kind of metric that we're making. Data integrity, sensitivity, comparability, and also governance and anti-gaming. You do not want a metric that somebody's going to manipulate. You've seen that in organizations that create a metric system and then people manipulate it. They figure out a way to manipulate it so they always look good. Now, that it doesn't look good, it's not really good, but they look good. And so that's what you're having to watch for all the time. So look at the bottom of your slide. So are we creating stakeholder value? Are we seeing signals early enough to act? What decisions should we make now? And are we improving without harmful trade-offs? So are we improving temporarily but hurting the organization overall? Are we improving temporarily but hurting the project overall or the company overall? So you're looking at it through those eyes of you're trying not to do harm to something else. You want to be positive on both sides, not do harm to one or the other is what you're trying desperately to do. So let's look and talk about some bad metrics. These are metrics that could be harmful to your organization. So let's walk through these. The first one is called vanity metric. So vanity metrics that do not connect to real outcomes. So a type of vanity metric that we all see, page views, downloads, likes. We can send something out on a video and we can have 400 likes. But if I haven't sold anything, that has not been a good piece of marketing or good video. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm not expecting to sell something from every video, but I just wanted you to see that. We can have a gazillion likes, but how does that translate into a metric that's going to bring and help our business, to bring value to our business? A like, unless it's translating over to where it's dollars and cents or somebody's buying your product or service, that might be one of those. It's a vanity. Sounds good. I had 1 million hits. Really? How much money did you make last year? Well, I made $47. Well, Bubba, we got to work on this because that's a disconnect like crazy. Look at the second one. This is a metric without ownership. Who's responsible for tracking this metric? Who's the authority to decide whether it changes? And so you're going to have somebody there because they're going to have to change. You're tweaking this. You're hitting a target that you've never hit before, and it's a movable target. So somebody has to own this thing. Third is going to be metrics that punish transparency. You want to watch for this. This would be real easy to do sometimes. So it makes people look worse when they report the problem, the gap, or the issue. So there's something in that metric that people get dinged on because they brought up that there's a gap here or they discovered something. You don't want that. You want people to have that transparency and that freedom to share without the fear of being some type of retaliation or the fear of being hurt from something like that. The other is going to be metrics that encourage gaming. Now, we talked about gaming a moment ago. Let me hit it one more time. Metrics that unintentionally motivate people to manipulate behavior so that numbers look good even when the real outcome does not improve. So average call time. So we helped a company years ago who was recruiting nurses. And so we looked at average call time because we wanted to see how important it was to be on the phone connected to a placement of a nurse in a hospital. And those average call times did make a difference in some cases. Well, then all of a sudden you start seeing people start staying on the phone forever and they wouldn't disconnect. The hospital would hang up and they wouldn't hang up because the call time would be long. And so you think, oh my gosh, this person has spent 45 minutes in call time. And what you find out is really it was only 5, but they didn't hang their phone up for 40 minutes so that they can manipulate that metric. That's what we're talking about with gaming. It did not bring any value. And so they were manipulating so they wouldn't get confronted about short call times. The other is going to be metrics that measure activity instead of value. This is where we are too right now. These are metrics that focus on, we're measuring activities, we're measuring deliverables, but sometimes we measure busyness rather than impact. A university tracks the number of emails sent to prospective students. That's busyness. The number of meetings held. Look, you and I can be very live in meetings all day long, but we've all attended those stupid meetings that are that are not run very well. We've all been in those meetings, and you think, "Oh my gosh, just poke me in the eye." If I sat here another minute, we just die over some of those. We've all been there. But what I'm getting at here is we could track it, but if it's not a level of quality, if it's not a level of quality for an email, if it's not a level of quality for the meeting, that meeting's a bad thing to track. It's not accomplishing anything because you're not getting any value from that. The other would be metrics that create false perceptions. Metrics appear highly accurate because they use quantitative numbers, ranking, or scores, but the data is subjective. People use numbers all the time, quantitative metrics all the time. So make sure what you say it measures, it measures. I had a grad student in a paper just last week report all these big fancy things about teams. Well, I get to looking at it and totally different country, totally different culture, totally different culture for the organization. And I'm thinking, could that, and my question to him was, can that be replicated here in the United States? And he was shocked because he had a reference, a scholarly reference that said this. And he said, well, that was my proof that it could happen here. No, that was your proof it happened there, but it's not your proof it happens here. And so that's what you're looking for as well. And then last, metrics that are not actionable. Metrics are measurements that do not tell someone what to do next. They might describe a situation, but they don't guide for improvement. Students are 75% satisfied. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? We want to get that other 25%, but what direction do we go? How are they satisfied? What satisfies them? What doesn't satisfy them? That's really what I'm looking for here. So I hope you're understanding. I hope you catch what I'm trying to say to you with some of this so it makes sense. All right, let's go to our next piece, data availability and maturity. This is a big piece. How mature is the data? How good is the data behind your firewall right now at your organization? So creating, tracking, and new metrics means being intentional with future metric design. So you don't just have cost, time, and schedule, or cost, time, and scope. You are measuring other things to look at the progress of your projects. What future outcomes are we trying to improve? What data do we already have? What new data would we need to capture? That's going to be a huge piece of discussion. What's too expensive or intrusive to measure? How do we pilot a new metric before scaling it 100%? Could this metric be gamed by people? Are we measuring activity or outcome? What metric do we wish we had last year? Think about that. If we were measuring this, it would have helped us in the problem we had last year. So just some things, I'm trying to just get you to think about some of these things, okay? Next, identify forecastable metric categories. Forecasting future metrics works best when the team organizes metrics into categories. This prevents leaders from over-forecasting cost and schedule while ignoring value, adoption, stakeholder confidence, risk, whatever else you're wanting to measure. Categories allows you to typically have a bit more balanced type of metric system. And so you're probably going to want to include that as you look at everything as well. So let's talk about the forecasting. This is where AI has a tendency to shine because it's a predictive forecast. So forecasting is the process of using current data, historical evidence, assumptions, trends, and expert judgment to predict or forecast future project performance. Your tool that you install in your organization down the road will use your internal data to do this. But if your data is bad, it could be forecasting something that's not correct for your company because it's going off of biased or bad data. In value delivery paradigms, you're not just predicting the completion of a project being on time or on budget, you're forecasting where the project delivers its intended value. What is value to that customer compared to, well, we delivered it on time and on budget, but did it bring the value? That's going to be the difference. Categories of forecasted metrics are just to kind of wet your whistle. Delivery forecast metrics, value forecast, adoption, stakeholder confidence, risk and uncertainty, decision and quality forecast. All of these can be some categories that would help you with some of these areas. So let's give you a little sample of some of these. So delivery forecast. These metrics forecast whether the project is likely to meet execution expectations. So you're looking at estimated completion date, forecasted cost at completion, schedule, milestones, resource, capacity, dependency, delays. These have a lot of the components of what we measure right now because we do things with deliverables. So this is very familiar to us. When we talk about value forecasts, though, this might be brand new. These metrics forecast whether the project is going to create the benefit that they said. So forecasted return on investment, expected cost savings, projected revenue impact, expected process improvement, anticipated productivity gain, projected service quality. Now, the reason why you're seeing this come in is because typically we'll build a business case in the beginning of a project that has all of these benefits and return on investment in them. And then when we finish the project, nobody ever looks to see, did we get the value that we said we were going to get up front? And so this is one of the reasons why PMI is doing so much of this, is to say, we said it's going to bring us $1 million in revenue. Did it bring us $1 million in revenue after we finished that project and got it going? And so they're looking to see that confirmation on the back end. Adoption forecast metrics. The project cannot create value if people do not use the outcome. Adoption forecasting predicts whether users, customers, stakeholders are likely to accept and use the project deliverable. So let's say, for an example, you put in an AI chatbot for customer service for your agency, your organization. Will people use it? You're going to have some people who are not going to use it at all because they hate it. They're scared of it. They're nervous about it. And then you'll have some people who will love it. And of course, as it continues to evolve, it will get better, and because your technology will get better, but it will be something that will help over time. You'll have more people who will accept it over time, but you're going to have people who are not going to accept it. So when you start looking at some of the examples for adoption, you're looking at a lot of pieces like adoption readiness. How ready is the customer out here to accept what we're wanting them to do? Projected user participation, training. If we provide free training, would they even come to the training? Pilot engagement, can we test it and then learn from that pilot to help us? Expected usage rather than after launch. What's the change resistant? And people are resistant to change. We talk about it like we're not. As long as you're the one doing the changing, I'm positive for it. But don't make me change. And that's kind of what the thing that we get into. Everything we're talking about today is change that's happening in that project world that we live in. What about stakeholder confidence forecast metrics? Stakeholder confidence influences project support, funding, adoption, long-term success. The better we are at using projects to drive change in the organization in the direction we're going right now, the better you're going to have confidence in the organization that projects can drive change. And so it is a cause and effect kind of mindset. If we have a bunch of failed projects trying to drive organizational change, you'll find organizations putting the brakes on and they'll go back to the old way of doing it. Because the old way they understood, the old way had some success. But so that's the reason why when you're looking at projects driving change, we're changing culture, whether we like it or not. We are change managers, regardless of what's happening. Risk and uncertainty forecast metrics. They estimate where problems are likely to emerge. This is a great tool. These are great measurements. We don't measure everything here. Many of you measure different pieces of it depending on your industry and the type of project. But to have the ability to look and scan these literally at your fingertips in a matter of moments is going to be a wealth of information for you. Decision quality forecast. Decision quality affects future project performance. Forecasting can help identify whether governance is likely to slow or strengthen the project. Examples could be decision latency forecast, probability of unresolved escalations, expected number of decision reversals, governance and bottleneck risk, evidence readiness for major decisions. Typically, we don't measure how good the decisions were. We talk about it, but we don't measure it, and we sure as heck don't talk about it in public a lot of times. But think about it. How many decisions have been reversed? We made the decision, then we changed the decision to go back to the way it was. How many decisions we find out that, you know what, they needed training before we made that decision? We're asking them to do something we've never trained them to do. We get caught into some of these cycles like this. And what this is trying to do is get you thinking about it before you do some of those things and be able to lay the foundation that's going to be successful, not jumping here and jumping back and jumping here and jumping back over and over again. Identifying early signals for future value. To identify leading indicators, ask what would we expect to see early if the project was likely to succeed. Now, that's a very visionary statement and question, but it would allow you to start seeing some things because everything's not going to just be like a switch and flip and everybody's now using the new project typically. So you start seeing people attending training early because you got training before the project's implemented. In the pilot, you start seeing a lot of interaction with the people. They're logging in. They're looking at what you're trying to show them. Managers are encouraging and positive about the new system that's coming in, all of those kind of things. And sometimes we don't think about how negative we can be, but even small statements can be very negative with this. So early signals can make a huge difference. In those early signals of future value, for an example, are there some warning signs? Well, forecasting should also look for early signs that value's at risk. So if nobody's attending the training, Do we have a problem? If people are constantly griping about it, objecting about this thing happening, is there a problem? Frequent decision delays. No, it takes forever for somebody to make a decision on this new thing that we're supposed to be so great. Unresolved dependencies, unclear benefit ownership, increasing requirements and volatility, declining team capacity. People are pulling back from working with or connected to that project. So what do we need to do to turn that piece around? Those are devastating, and actually that could cause your project to fail, where your project maybe had a good plan, great budgeting, great leadership, good team, but once again, receptivity could kill everything associated with it. Forecasting methods. We get into these, we've done these over the years. The first would be expert judgment, trend analysis. We're going to talk about these a little bit more. Scenario forecasting, probability-based forecasting, and predictive analysis. So probability-based and predictive analysis are a little bit more new. Maybe you're not doing those. So let's look at them a little deeper here. So let's start with expert judgment. Expert judgment forecasting uses the knowledge of experienced project managers, sponsors, technical leads, users, and subject matter experts. This is a powerful thing because you got people sitting around the table. The negative is judgment can be biased. We can bias one another. We can be biased based on negative events that have happened. And so if we don't have a lot of data, we're making a conclusion on the data that might not be correct. The project could be very unique and we don't have data at all to fit that. Conditions could be changing more faster than we thought, and we maybe didn't catch it, and so that could make it negative. Even human judgment is necessary, and our judgment is off. We've all made mistakes. We've all made those mistakes on the project that if we were doing it again, we'd do it differently, and that's part of growth and everything like that. But the point is that you have that capability to draw from people who have experience. That's a positive thing. When you talk about trend analysis, we have done this. This is where you're looking for a trend, patterns over time, estimate future performance. Leaders check whether the project's improving or declining. And so what you're looking for is that big trend that's happening. And so, defect discovery is increasing, or change requests are accelerating. Most of us have looked at those for a long time. You start having a lot of change requests. Okay, so what is the deal here? Did we miss something in the scope when we were gathering requirements? I mean, we've had that type of discussion for years. Scenario forecasting. This might be new for you. It creates a multiple possible futures rather than one single prediction. It's useful when uncertainty is really high. So you present several different future goals out here, or several different future situations of what the organization could look like. And so you could look at best case, the value is achieved with almost minimal disruption. Expected case, which the value is adhered to with normal risk and normal adjustments, or worst case, where the value is significantly delayed or reduced. And so by looking at these three, then you're probably going to hit someplace in the middle of all of these. You're not going to necessarily hit the worst case in most cases, even though you have talked about it with your team. But here's the thing, you might not hit the best case. You might get the expected, but you might not hit the best case. We want the best case. That's going to be the best for all of us, but that might not be what you get. The probability-based forecasting forecasts the estimates, the likelihood of different outcomes. So the method is stronger than simple status reporting because it communicates uncertainty. Now, many of you do probability-based forecasting in your investments. Your investment person does this. They'll forecast if the investments are real strong between now and your retirement, here's what they're thinking, and they'll normally do a medium, and they'll normally do a low. And typically they'll go with the medium because that's a little bit more realistic depending on how many years you have. So probability-based. And so a lot of times this is based off of the percentage of how things are running at the current time. And so some examples could be 80% probability of meeting the launch date. Of course, what we want is 100%, but that could be your probability that came out. 60% probability of reaching the adoption target within 90 days. 40% probability benefits would be realized within the first quarter. So all these are doing here is giving you some probabilities. The problem is that percentage might not be right. And so what is that based off of? What data did we look at for that? Now, if we're using AI for that, it's looking at the data internally. But once again, how good is that data? If it's great, then maybe that 80% is spot on. But if it's kind of hit and miss, like some of our data is, that's not going to be as good. Predictive analysis. This is where your AI tool is going to shine for you. So it uses data models to forecast future project outcomes. So you're predicting cost overruns. You're not running over now, but it predicts it, tells you how much based on the pattern that it's picking up. forecasting schedule delays, defect escapes, predicting stakeholder dissatisfaction, estimating adoption likelihood, forecasting benefits realization. Predictive is typically always in you're forecasting it in the front. It hasn't happened yet. And this is great because sometimes you're able to make some changes now that will dictate what that prediction is, to make sure that prediction does or does not happen, depending on what it is for our project here. And then we have invented metric samples. So a lot of these are happening, and so these I wanted you to see these. Some of these I've never seen before. They're just been part of the research for this. Stakeholder confidence decay rate, that was something new to me. A decision friction index, benefit realization probability, adoption momentum score, learning velocity, change absorption capacity, strategic alignment drift. I thought it was interesting. Of course, the strategic alignment drift, we maybe didn't call it that, but we look to see, is our project driving that strategic goal? And so we talk about that. Whether we have the titles or not, if we're talking about that topic, then you probably are looking at some of those metrics in that area already. Next, let's look at creating a template for these new metrics that you're going to be creating. So what are you going to call the metric? What's the purpose of it? Questions that you want that metric to answer. What formula or scoring method are you going to use? Data source, measurement, frequency. Who owns it? Somebody's got to own that metric to update it and make adjustments to it. Target or threshold. What decisions will it inform? What are the known limitations? Because every metric we have is some type of limitation. Also, possible gaming or misuse. Could people manipulate it in some particular way? And so that's one of the things that you're looking at when you come up, and you will be creating new metrics. You're going to have to as things shift, because once again, as more and more projects and more become part of that strategic plan, and it's going to be verbalized and magnified more, you're going to make sure that you have additional metrics to support, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing, and is it bringing that value? All right, so let me talk to you about a couple of things. So don't get off yet. I've got a slide in just a moment I want to show you to help your people, okay? So here's the future webinars. And so I know Kim does such a good job sending you out all of these on a monthly basis. Next month, we're going to be talking about building resilient projects, thriving in times of disruption. And these are all the webinars I'm going to be doing through the end of the year. We have one last free PMP Mastermind group. So if you're not familiar with Mastermind, this is a 5-day course. Really, it's not 5 days. It's about 5 hours, because they're able to sign in and sign out anytime they want. But it lasts for a week. It talks to them about the PMP. It helps them fill out their application as much as they possibly can. It shows them some videos. They take a few little practice tests on the PMP, and it kind of helps them understand and answer those questions on taking the PMP that maybe they don't know. And so we do that for free. People sign in. Then we do a drawing at the end of the week. We give away one scholarship for somebody that's in that class. And so if you got people who are looking at this and have a lot of questions, put them in this, because it'll minimize the questions they have. And then for those of you who don't know this, we started earlier this year, and Kim sends this out. And so if you're on the email system, you get 2 videos a week from this. And I'm the one who's cutting these bad boys. And so this is our YouTube link right here. And so we have a YouTube channel, and this is 7 minutes to PMP mastery. This is on current PMP, the current PMP outline. And so I talk about what they do on the test. I typically will give you a little bit of teaching. I'll sometimes talk about how they phrase it sometimes on the test. Most of the videos, I'll even give you a sample question that I've written that goes along with it, and then let you see this. And we talk about what was the right answer and why these others were not right. Remember, for those of you who haven't taken the PMP, you're not taking a test like we normally take a test. It's not finding the right answer, it's finding the best answer. You might have 2 or 3 right answers, but one is better than the others. So this is a wealth of information. I make 2 videos a week, and Kim sends those out if you're wanting to be part of it, but they're all being warehoused on our YouTube channel, and that's where it is right there. The other thing is going to be, we've got 3 additional virtual PMP boot camps, August, October, and December. The boot camps have changed as of July 9th, new material. And so this material comes from PMI. It is no longer based on PMBOK any longer. PMBOK is one of like 5 or 6 different resources. So it's not like it was in the old days when many of us did our PMP. They are now no longer using PMBOK, where we're doing all the inputs, outputs tools. They are using their curriculum. So we are an ATP, that is an authorized training partner with PMI. and they will get material, and we'll do it virtual so they can be anywhere in the world on this thing. So we'd love to have them be part of this boot camp, and I'll be the one teaching it as well. Also, if you have questions for me, or you want to talk to us about doing a specialized group for your people, we do specialized PMP classes for folks anywhere in the world, really. And so I need 10 people typically to be part of that. And so we set time aside and just train your people in how to pass the PMP or the ACP. We'll do it for that as well. And it allows you and your people to be able to be part of that intensive time together. But call and talk to us about it, and we'll see if we can do it. And I'll maneuver time for me to be the one to do it as well. But I'd love to have you in here. So anyway, let me bring this to a close. Let me thank you so much for being on this. I appreciate it every month. I appreciate you being part of this, and I hope it brings value to you. So I appreciate it so much. And so I hope you have a wonderful summer, and I'll see you next month. Okay? Bye, everybody. Have a good day.